It's Will Shawn Podcast. The internet cried out for two more blowhards, and they courageously answered that call. Armed with the weapon of wit, each week they're joined by guests to discuss movies, television, pop culture, and anything else that's pissing them off. Take it away, boys.
I'm Will Link.
And I'm Sean David.
And this is Will Shawn Podcast?
Successfully for more than 100 days. How you doing, Will?
So, I've been doing something I haven't done since I was in my mid-20s.
Anal?
Query letters.
Ah.
I am back to sending query letters, which could also involve anal.
Give or take.
Right now I'm taking it. It's been interesting because, you know, when I was before I was specking scripts in Hollywood, I was trying to get a manager.
Yeah.
Now, I've written something new after losing a manager and not having a manager for 5 years, and I'm trying to get back out with my writing, and I don't know, I do not have the patience for this anymore. I understand why people give up in life, but I will not give up. I am going to
with your young adult novel.
That's the other thing that's driving me crazy. My novel is not young adult, but people think it's young adult, but it's not. Alex Stein has said so. So this has occupied every free moment I've had lately. So I don't even know what's going on in the world of Will Shawn Podcast. So Sean, will you tell me what's going on in the world of Will Shawn Podcast?
I want to congratulate some of our former guests. Rena Strober was recently on an episode of Veep.
She was great.
She played the third of Jonah's awkward or increasingly more awkward dates that he held. So if you caught the second episode of the season, you saw her there. She's fantastic. So congratulations to her. And beyond that, just want to continue to implore all of you from the deepest corners of my very scarred heart to subscribe, to like us on Facebook, to follow us on Twitter, and to tell other people about the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
And who is our sponsor this week?
Set in a dystopian world where females are ascendant and men reduced to animals fit only for breeding, one courageous male will summon the courage to provide pleasure and seed to thousands of desperate women. It's up to our hero, of Samantha, to repopulate our post-apocalyptic planet, The Man-Maid's Tale, coming this winter to a Fitbit near you.
I am excited for this project. I've been waiting. I've been counting the days.
Well, you know, it's rough out there for men.
On the show today, our President Cuck is not attending the White House Correspondents' Dinner. We will discuss if that's good, bad, or if nothing matters anymore because we're about to get bombed by North Korea. The Unicorn Frappuccino is a thing that you pointed out to me, Sean. We will break that down. And once again, Los Angeles, you have fucked me when it's come to dating. I will explain. But first, we are very excited to have with us a returning champion to the show. The one and only writer, comedian, performer, man of 1,000 talents, Dylan Brody.
834 talents. Let me say to you, sir.
Yes.
I did not know my first novel was a young adult novel. And it was not until I accepted that it was a young adult novel that it got published and found a readership. And in fact, the people who bought it said, we think this is a young adult novel, but we don't even want to publish it for young adults. We want to publish it for gifted youngsters. So it turned into a whole different market from what I intended it for.
I have no problem embracing the idea of a young adult novel, but anyone who seems to think it's going to be a young adult novel then tells me it isn't. And I don't know. I'm confused. I'll embrace anything.
Well, the curse words and sex.
There's a lot of curse words and sex.
Then I urge you, in your query letters, to say, I have a new novel. I'm very excited about it. I would be interested in having your advice on what market it should fit into.
Because ask for advice.
The thing is, everybody loves to give advice. As you can tell by the way I adjust my glasses and lean into the microphone when I feel as though that is what I am doing. Everyone likes to give advice. Everyone likes to feel as though their opinion and their thoughts are valued. And it will give people an interest in reading it that they might not have if it's just someone seeking representation.
Okay. That's actually a very good
You have
point.
to make them complicit in your literary crime.
That's correct.
That is correct.
I'm troubled by the way in which he said to me, "That's actually an interesting point," as though the last thing we had expected today, having you on the show, was interesting points.
Well, look, Dylan.
Well, that came out of left field from Mr. Brody.
You have
And scene.
you have not steered me wrong yet in your advice.
But we
that
are
you've
4
given
minutes
me
in.
the past. Well, no, in the past, I always point to whenever I get ridiculous notes from a show I'm about to perform in, I always think back to, well, I will just go do this on stage, and once it kills, no one will care.
That's correct.
I've worked past dealing with these people, and it always goes well.
There is, and I discover this more and more as I am aware of the crushing urgency of mortality. There is a great benefit to doing the work you do and not waiting for permission.
Yes. No, that's true, and I think that is something that you don't learn until you get older, until you've been doing this a lot. So Dylan, it's
Yes.
been a while since you've been on. Last time you were on here, you were talking about a novel. You were talking about Laughs Last.
Laughs Last, currently available at Amazon.com and DylanBrody.com. Also, I'm in conversations about a new deal on that book.
Oh,
and there's a sitcom that I wrote, a half-hour comedy that I wrote that's based on the book that Ed Asner is now attached to play the grandfather.
Oh.
Which, as it turns out, does nothing to sell a half-hour comedy in Los Angeles and modern America.
People aren't excited about Ed Asner?
People, the people I pitch to go, I'm sorry, who? There's a lot of confusion about anything that happened pre-Cheers.
See, this drives me a little crazy, because I am, like...
You're this generation's Ed Asner.
Well, here's the thing. Exactly. When Mary Tyler Moore died recently, I have this new job. I'm in this office. There are people younger than me. Now, I was not...
Just for the record, that would be younger than I. Keep going.
I was not... It's gems like that in my book. It's grammar like that.
You are the object, not the subject of the sentence.
But here's the thing.
There's a thing?
I was in the office when she died. I did not watch the Mary Tyler Moore show when it aired because I was too young or not born. I know who Mary Tyler Moore is. I have a well-awareness of this. There were people in my office who I swear to God did not. They knew the name. They had no idea who she was.
Well,
and this
until you told about ordinary people, like, oh, that's right. Big ordinary people fans.
And this drives me crazy. Ed Asner, yeah. Lou Grant.
Yeah.
The grandfather from Up. The dude from Up.
Why do I know this and these other people, some my age or younger, don't?
Because you are aware of the entertainment industry as an industry with a history. Most people in America, and even in LA, those who are not involved in the business, which I spell with a D, by the way, think of television and film as this week's release.
Yeah.
And they don't think of it in terms of a history and a tradition and a culture-shaping medium. So it behooves you to be aware of who Ed Asner is, but who he was that made him who he is. And other people, the Kardashians have replaced the whomevers.
The Gabors.
Yes, the Kardashians have replaced the Gabors wholly, in the same way that at one point Scott Baio replaced Tony Danza. And these things happen, and they just move on to the next thing.
And now Aaron Moran is dead.
And now Aaron Moran is dead of fast-spreading cancer.
So,
speaking of the crushing urgency of mortality.
Yes, exactly. So one thing I did want to talk to you about that you've been doing since being on here last.
Anything.
Opening for David Sedaris.
Has that happened since the last time I was here?
I believe so. So we'll take full credit for it.
Okay, well done, sir. Yeah, it had nothing to do with the long correspondence or the sucking up that I did.
Well, I was about to ask, how did that come about?
David Sedaris is genuinely one of my heroes, and one of the kindest, most generous people who has come into my career. 10 years ago or so, when I was starting to do the storytelling thing, before I had started to take it out and perform with it again. I had stopped being a stand-up comic, and had hibernated and studied martial arts and done things that were not performance related and written. I started doing these stories on the radio, essentially pre-podcast. A place up in San Francisco run by Stephen Page called KYCY Radio, KYOUR, I think, online, mentioned on an NPR program I was listening to that they were going to be doing all podcast radio. And I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be the opposite of all podcast radio. What they were actually doing was letting people upload stuff and listening to it, and if they liked it, they'd put it on.
Interesting.
And I had a recording that I had made of a story that I wanted to get on This American Life that they had rejected. And I sent it to this guy, and he got back to me and said, yeah, I want to do this, and do you have any more? And I said, yes, how many do you want? And he said, how many do you want to do? And I said, I can do one a week if you want. What does it pay? And he said, nothing. And I said, I'm in. Until
I could do 2 a week.
Until recently, that was how I negotiated. It's only in the past couple of years that I've begun to learn the value of money. So I started doing these stories, and I did, over the course of the year, I did, 34 stories, and people liked them. So I started selling these CDs that I was burning out of my house from a website that I created of whole cloth, which it turns out whole cloth, not the best stuff to use when building a website. So on one of the CDs, I had a little text box on the front that said, striving to be the heterosexual David Sedaris. And somebody mentioned to me that there had been this exciting moment years ago when I had sent a tape to George Carlin, and he had responded to it, and I'd had a conversation with him. And they said, why have you sent these to David Sedaris? So I took that piece of text off the cover of the CD, because that's just creepy.
Yeah.
And I sent him the 2 CDs. And he sent me a postcard that said, thank you for this. It's framed in my office. Thank you for the CDs, which I've enjoyed, and I particularly like this line in this story. And I called my parents immediately. They were the ones who had initially turned me on to David Sedaris. And my mother, being the woman she is, said, well, that doesn't mean he listened to them, Dylan. He might just have scanned through to find a line to reference, to be kind. Okay. I had a terrible agent at the time who said, ask him for a blurb. So I sent him a letter asking him for a blurb. And he sent me a long typed letter telling me why he would not give me a blurb. And begging me not to think him a monster. And it was the sweetest letter I had ever received. And I sent him a note saying, of course I don't think you're a monster. That makes perfect sense. I understand what's going on there. You should know your original postcard is now framed on my office wall. And I'm trying to decide how to do these next albums. Do you think I should continue to produce them on my own, or should I? And he sent, because everybody likes to give advice.
Yeah.
Have you figured out that I'm into the callbacks?
No, this is, this is good. This advice is good advice, just in general.
He responded saying, find a label. Don't put them out on your own. By the time that letter got back to me, I had produced the next 2 CDs. I had produced them, though, with the intent to find a label.
Okay.
I hadn't produced them like in my office the way I had been for the radio. I rented a studio for one of them to do it in a sound booth. That was my first CD, Brevity. And my second one, True Enough, I did in a larger studio where I could have an audience of about 40 people.
Yeah.
And I started feeling around for a record label. Just as I made the deal, my first deal with Stand Up Records to license those 2 CDs, David was performing in San Diego. I bought tickets. I went. I stood on the line because he sits out front in the theater and he signs books until the last possible minute when they need to get everyone seated.
Yeah.
And then he goes backstage. And then he goes on and does what he does. And then he sits and signs books until the last person who wants something signed has gotten through the line. And he takes a minute or 2 with everybody who comes through, and he has a conversation with them. And if he's met them more than once, he very likely remembers their names. And he's really facile with the conversational presence with each person.
I've experienced that, so yeah, it's very true.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I got to the front of the line, and I hadn't bought anything for him to sign. I had brought copies of the 2 new CDs, and I said, Mr. Sedaris, I'm sorry, I didn't bring anything for you to sign. He said, that's okay. What can I do for you? And I said, I'm Dylan Brody. And he said, oh, hi, I'm so glad to meet you. Are you still doing the martial arts? And he knew stuff from my CD, and he knew who I was. And we chatted for a minute, and I said, listen, I just signed a deal with Stand Up Records. We don't have the produced, the packaged ones yet, but here are the new CDs. And he said, oh, good, I can't wait to listen to these. And off he went, and he wrote me a letter thanking me for them. And he and I continued to correspond. And after about a year of this, I contacted his agent and said, would David ever consider having someone open for him? And his agent said, David never shares the stage with anyone. And I said, fair enough.
Yeah.
Let that go. And then at a certain point, when I'd signed to do 3 more CDs with Stand Up, I sent him a note because he had said so many nice things about my work in letters. I said, David, I know you once said you wouldn't give me a blurb. May I have your permission to cobble something together from letters you've written me? And he said, oh, please do. That saves me so much trouble and heartache. I was like, yes, okay. So now I have a couple of blurbs from David Sedaris that are really just nice things he said to me.
Yeah.
Years went by, and I went to see him a couple more times and sent him things, and he sent me things, and we were pen pals. He has described us on stage as pen pals, so I'm willing to go with that. I guess 4 years ago, he sent me an email that said, I'm going to be playing Pasadena, the Pasadena Civic Center. Would you have any interest in doing 5 or 7 minutes before I go on stage? And I sent him an email that said, yes, 1,000 times yes. What is the date? When do I have to be there? And I went and did that. And it was an extraordinary evening for me. I don't fill 2,500-seat rooms.
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah.
And it's not the kind of space I'm really used to working. And it went very well. The following year, I had heard that he was going to be at Royce Hall, and he hadn't asked me, and it was freaking me out. And I sent him a note that said, hey, do you want me to come? Could I come? And he responded saying, please don't ask me that. It implies that I've forgotten you, and I haven't. I already asked another friend who really needed a break to open for me, and then the woman whose book I was going to read some stuff from is going to be in town, so and I didn't want it to turn into David's showcase night. Yeah. And I said, great, no problem. Sorry to put you out. And a couple of weeks later, he sent me an email that said, although I'm going to be in San Diego and Berkeley, would you like to do either or both of those? And I said, yes, I'll do both of those. So I opened for him at the Balboa Theater in San Diego, which is a gorgeous
Beautiful
space.
theater.
And then the Zellenbach Hall in Berkeley, which is a giant freak. Go ahead. Did you see me there?
I'll tell you offline.
You got there too late to see me.
I've been to Berkeley.
Oh, I see. Okay. We'll discuss that at another time, apparently. But boy, those hand gestures that came with Berkeley were disturbing.
I'm a big Ann Coulter fan. What can I say?
I understand. Yeah, fair enough. When I went, there were no protests. So I opened for him there. And then the following year, he had me open for him at the Valley Performing Arts Center here in town.
Which is beautiful.
Which is a gorgeous space. And he hasn't had me since, which I take to mean that I was becoming a threat.
So there you go, the greatest compliment.
I believe I believe I'm the first person he ever shared the stage with. He now does it regularly. He invites people. He always will bring someone else's book with him that he promotes.
Yeah.
And the first time I opened for him, he said during his act, Dylan is selling his CDs out there. Buy those before you buy any of my books. I'm rich enough. That's not a terrible endorsement.
Yeah.
He's been incredibly kind to me, and I believe I was the first he had share a stage, and I'm almost certain I'm the only one that he's had multiple times when he was on the West Coast.
I mean, that's as big a compliment as you're ever going to get.
Well, have you seen an increase in your audience from these engagements with
marginally?
Okay.
Marginally, but that just has to do with my own learning curve in terms of how to generate any buzz from anything I do.
Right.
It's only in the last 10 years that I've really learned to treat anything that I do as a career.
Right.
And as a job, and not as a precious jewel of talent that someone else should nurture into full reality. Because I was so stoned, literally so stoned nonstop for so many years, that I wasn't confronting the reality of the world around me. I was still struggling away under these weird preconceptions about how it was supposed to work, and resenting things for not working the way I imagined they should, and not changing anything I was doing to match up with the way things actually work.
Welcome to every one of my bowel movements.
Really? Do you get stoned for that?
Will, you may need to call someone to clean the toilet.
Exactly. There's some things going on here.
Can't do it backwards.
Well, look, that's... So, speaking of tours...
Yes.
Yeah. The city in France?
Yes, exactly. Which could be on the list, because you are going on an international
I am going on
tour.
a multinational tour. I am an intercontinental sensation, which is to say that I feel things on many
As
many
we like to
lands.
describe this podcast, we are an internationally tolerated podcast.
Yes.
Very nice.
There are listeners in other countries.
There's one person in Poland. I can't quite
keeps
figure this out.
downloading the episodes.
Gotta love that guy.
I don't know. I feel like he's still just keeping an eye out on my relatives. He's just, he didn't get the ball.
That could be. Just, give him a shout out by name. Invite him if he's ever on this coast to come on the show.
He may be the guy that ended up in my great-grandparents' house in Szczecin, Poland.
Well,
So you're going on...
might be the same person.
You're going on tour with a show.
I'm going on tour with the show. Dylan Brody's Driving Hollywood. Currently, a special that you can download at nextupcomedy.com.
Okay.
In that format, it is, as one would expect, knowing my work, me standing behind a microphone talking about myself. The new tour is a fully staged theatrical event. It is me moving around a stage talking about myself. I have sets. I have a set.
Okay.
And I have lighting cues. And it's the director, Nancy Carlin, understood the restrictions that I put on what could be done in the reimagining of the show, and is brilliant, and was able to take me farther out of my comfort zone than I anticipated going with the project, while remaining within the confines of what I was not willing to do with this show. On the chance that any of your listeners are unfamiliar with my work, what are the odds, really?
Never tell him the odds.
Never tell them how long it's really going to take. You're never going to be called a miracle worker if you tell them how long it's really going to take. There's a thing that's happening now in the world of solo shows. And this thing is that people who might or may not be able to tell a story create instead a PowerPoint. And I didn't want it to turn into that. What started all of that was that some of your listeners might not be familiar with my work, and that's where we got off the track. I tell stories. It's what I do. I just tell long, nested flashback stories about my life. And the longer the show I'm doing, the more callbacks I get to do, and the more threaded and layered the weave becomes. And I wanted it to retain that feel. And the first person who had considered directing me wanted to turn it into a PowerPoint presentation. She'd wanted to, and then we could have when you talk about your dad, we could have a picture of your dad. Can you get a picture of your dad? No, I think they can guess kind of what my dad looks like, And then we can just pull words out from what you say, and they can drift across the stage behind you. No,
that's incredibly distracting.
That's the stupidest idea. I've already said that word. Why are we going to be reading it over and over again?
Everyone learns through different processes.
No, fuck you. I don't want to do do kinetic exercises with my audience so that they can, it was, but Nancy Carlin and I, when I was told by the producer who wanted to put me on tour, we'd like to have you work with the director, I said, that's great. Let me write a script.
Okay.
And we'll go from there, because so much of my work is sort of organically developed through performance of the story over and over again, and then that story, and then when it turns into a longer show, which stories fit together and how am I going to create the thread, and then I essentially improvise through the structure every night. So I had to, I took the special, and I had the award-winning special, and I had somebody literally transcribe what I did in that one performance. Okay. And then from that, I built a script out where I said that the set is this, and there are these different areas representing these different, essentially, elements of my experience, elements of my psyche. And then, lights come up here, and lights go off there, and I move from here to there. And as I was writing it, I started to get excited when I was writing the script, and I realized I was going to get a laugh out of a lighting cue. And I thought, oh, this is going to be too much fun.
Yeah.
And then Nancy read the script and understood what I was doing, and she comes from an improv background. Her mom was one of the original Compass Players, if you know who they were. They were pre-Second City. They were that was Stiller and Mira and Nichols and May and Paul Dooley. Those people were all Compass Players, and then sort of shifted right into first class of Second City. And her mom was Joy Carlin, one of those people. So we did a week of 6 hours a day rehearsing in a space here in LA, and on the first day we could tell that we worked well together. And I said, listen, I don't know how you would feel about this, but what if at the end of each of these rehearsal days that we've got booked for the last hour and a half, we just invite people in and I run the show?
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, what a great idea!" So
that's the best way to find out if this stuff is working.
Because I'm not going to. Well, I know it'll work. But the best way for me to relearn it, because it's been by then a year since I'd done the show, was to do it in front of people. And I'm constantly writing new stuff if there are new people listening. Whereas if it's the same person, then I wind up writing in jokes for them, and I wind up, because I can't compartmentalize my own performance in that way. So I did essentially 4 preview performances for audiences ranging from 2 people to 9, I think, for the last one. And by the end of the week, I was just going, this is going to be a good show. Yeah. I no longer.
You felt it. You just.
I no longer have to worry about that part of this tour. Yeah. Now I just have to worry about how the hell I'm going to get laundry done when I'm in Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, they got the river. Not the river, the lake. I'm sorry. Why was I thinking of a river?
Isn't there a river? I don't know.
There's the Chicago River, but really it's all about Lake Michigan.
Don't they dye it green?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I am at a stage in my career now where I pay someone else to beat my clothes on a rock.
Well, this is going to be an exciting tour. Like you said, you're going to Chicago. I know you're going to New York. Those are places you expect. But like international, you're going to London. You're going to Spain.
I'm going to Barcelona. My producer said, we have to send you to Barcelona. And I said, good thinking. Why don't you send the guy who tells long, rambling stories filled with big words to non-English speaking countries?
This was what I was about to ask about.
Apparently, there's a fairly large expat population there. There is an even larger English-speaking population there. I am told all over Europe, with the exception of France, people learn English as the sort of the international language of choice.
You have to do what Eddie Izzard did, which was learn French so he could do stand-up comedy in France.
Yeah, I don't need to do that. I love Eddie, and I would love to have Eddie's career. Yeah. I am the only member of my family that does not have a proper ear for languages. So I've been listening to some Pimsleur Spanish while I drive around, so I can now ask people where the restaurant is over and over again. But I interestingly, I think if I had the patience, if I weren't so ridiculously verbal, I might have the patience and be able to learn languages more easily. The difficulty in expressing myself is too frustrating for me. But I can't. I have a great ear for accents, and I can do fake languages, which leads me to a story. I don't know if I've ever told it on the air before, on a microphone before.
Is an exclusive?
It's an exclusive. When I was a kid, my dad brought from New York a videotape machine. This is before people had VCRs. So it was a reel-to-reel videotape machine with a huge lever that you turned from one to forward and backward, and shatunk, and then the tape would slide down a quarter inch and things would close on it, and then it would start to play. And he brought me 3 episodes of Your Show of Shows to watch because he knew I was into comedy. He knew I was learning to be funny. He'd already hipped me to the Marx Brothers and Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, and if I was going to be interested in comedy, I should know the greats. And besides, he knew I loved the Dick Van Dyke Show, and he wanted me to see Carl Reiner younger. So I watched this stuff. And then the first time I ever laughed aloud at the television, a party was going on downstairs, and I discovered on PBS in upstate New York a thing called Steve Allen's Laugh Back, that was Steve Allen introducing segments from the old Steve Allen Show, hosted by Steve Allen, now repackaged and produced and distributed by Steve Allen. And I found him incredibly funny at whatever age I was, 9 or 11, and I laughed and I laughed and I laughed until my father came up to find out what was so funny. And he said, "Oh, Steve Allen, yeah, okay, I can see that," and then left me to continue watching. So in late 93, I got a job working for Steve Allen. And I'm transcribed. Steve Allen walked around all day with a little micro cassette recorder, and he would have ideas for his books, and he would have an idea of melody for a song, and he would meet somebody, and he would say your name and address into there, please. And then after he got their name and address, he would mutter into it, send them a copy of the book Dumpf. And then, so I would type up all these notes that he had made over the course of the day and then distribute them to the appropriate people at Meadowlark Industries, his company. Meadow Lane, I think. And one afternoon, Sid Caesar comes in. And I walked from my desk over to Steve Allen's door, and I knocked on his office. And I said, Steve, Sid Caesar is here. And he said, "Oh, yeah, tell him to have a seat and wait. I'm in the middle of something." Say, "Mr. Caesar, have a seat here. He'll be with you in a moment." And I go back to my desk, and I'm typing. Sid Caesar is sitting there, and I'm typing. Sid Caesar is sitting there. And finally I said, "Can I get you anything, Mr. Caesar?" "No, I'm fine. I don't know what he's doing that could be so important that he would leave you sitting here for this long." And Sid Caesar says to me, he's not doing anything important. He's keeping me waiting. And then he leans forward to yell at the door, "He's keeping me waiting because he can, and he's still pissed off about something I did 32 years ago." And now I'm sitting with irate Sid Caesar. And just beyond the door is Steve, who I now know is going to stall longer because he's like that at this point in his life. And I finished doing something that I'm doing. I finally turned to him and said, "You should know, Mr. Caesar, when I was a kid, my dad drove up from New York with this machine and let me watch And if it weren't for you, I never would have learned to do mock languages." And he said, "Oh, what mock languages do you do?" And I said, "I can do some French, I do some German, I can do some Russian." He says, I said, and I had a 5-minute mock Russian conversation with Sid Caesar until Steve Allen came out and said, "Stop bothering my guests, Dylan." And Sid said, "He wasn't bothering me. You were bothering me." And then he went into the office, and as he came out, I said, "Keep it up, kid." He walked away.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I have no real ear for languages, but I have a great ear for fake languages.
Fake languages. Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, Dylan, this show, when does the tour start?
I'm sorry, are we out of time?
No.
we're gonna have to move on to some of our pop culture.
Okay, whatever you like.
But I want to get to when this tour starts.
Saturday morning, I get on a plane for Chicago.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So now,
the day
when you're
after
listening to this,
when you're listening to this, I am on tour. The first 3 weeks of what will that be? May?
May, yeah.
The first 3 weeks of May, I am in Chicago at the Apollo. Those shows will be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I believe they are at 7:30 p.m. The following week, I am in Barcelona. That will be, I believe, the last week in May, the last full weekend in May, doing 3 shows at El Bar Teatro Tinta Roja.
That works.
And then
That could have been fake. That could have been fake.
Spanish,
but
I
no,
don't
that was I've practiced.
Check the website, people.
Tinta Roja. And then I do that for 1 week. It's just a 1 week engagement. And then I go to London. I have 1 week off to download porn and touch myself in a hotel. And then I am at the
La Tinta
Canal.
Roja in London.
At the Canal Cafe Theatre. The Canal Cafe Theatre in London for 3 weeks, where I think it's 3 weeks, where I learned to be funny in 1984 when I was studying in England. And then I come home for a day, and then I go to Boston and see a play that my dad wrote. And then I have a one-nighter in Saratoga Springs on the, I want to say 23rd or 24th of July. And then I'm home for 2 weeks, and then the New York run is in... Oh, that would be June, is Saratoga Springs. And then in July, I'm in New York for 3 weeks.
Okay.
And you can find all of this out at DylanBrody'sDrivingHollywood.com. In New York, I'm at the People's Improv Theater. That's the Pit in New York City.
And you can also, as you said, the special's available.
That special is available at nextupcomedy.com. You can do a free 1 month trial. If you want to extend your subscription, it's very inexpensive. And if you want to make it even more inexpensive, you can use my personal discount code Best Medicine, all one word, all caps, Best Medicine, as in laughter is, because under the Trump Care proposal, laughter will be the best medicine we can afford.
Grandma.
And then, and there are a lot of great comics. Brendan Burns is on there. There are a lot of great comics who have specials there, and 2 really awful ones, and me. And another special of mine, 2 other specials of mine actually are available now. More Arts, Less Martial is still available at rooftopcomedy.com. And Corner of Starbucks and Christopher Street was just released a few days ago on Revry, REVRY.com, which is an LGBTQIA specific website, streaming website. The special is all about the need for and the importance of marriage equality, and the idea that they would allow a cis white Jewish male to be on their network for download is an honor, an indication that I am genuinely the kind of ally to the underclass that I strive to be, at least for moments. That's called Corner of Starbucks and Christopher Street at Revry.com. I think I've plugged almost everything I have. Modern Depression Guidebook is about to be re-released by Miniver Press.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. First time ever in print. It's been an ebook before, but it's never been in print.
Well, look, he has plugged, but if you want to see more of his stuff,
If you want to buy my CDs.
if you want to buy everything, there is a link on our Facebook page.
Does that go to DylanBrody.com?
It does.
Excellent. That's
Yeah.
perfect.
So it goes to DylanBrody.com. You also should follow this man on Twitter, where you will also get updates on all this stuff as well.
That's great. And on Twitter, you not only get updates on this, you get the one-liners that I write that I no longer have a place for in my act. When I write one-liners now, I do 3 things. I call Paul Provenza and Kelly Carlin and sometimes Chris Pinna, and I just leave them on the voicemail. No hello, no nothing, just the one-liner, and then I hang up, and then I tweet them.
So you don't wait for the feedback. You just give them a sneak preview.
No.
Sean and I have a similar relationship, as when something horrific happens in the world, and Sean feels the need to make a joke about it, but doesn't want to get destroyed online, he sends me a series of horrific texts about
I
it.
call that comedy Tourette's.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
That's the release valve that keeps me out of trouble.
And you need to have that, but yeah, you can get in trouble online.
Some of the jokes that I'm writing now, though, I'm writing some dark one-liners now that will just have no place. I wrote one that I wish Gary Shandling was still alive, because this was one that I would have called him with, and now it's a phone number I wasn't supposed to use very often. But Paul Provenza has said that voicemail is the best medium for me. But it was A couple of years ago, I accidentally said my mother when I meant my wife. And it freaked me out. For like 6 months, I couldn't have sex with either of them.
Excellent.
So, speaking of places that you would get a lot of good one-liners.
Yes.
The White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Yes.
Over the years, this has become like a big, a big thing, a big, like, night of comedy in a weird way. Even though this is supposed
Night
to be
of a million stars.
It's supposed to be a dinner about scholarships for journalism, and it still is. But it became this almost a roast of the president and a roast of the media. And, I mean, back in the Bush days, Stephen Colbert came, and that was an amazing performance.
That was a performance that will forever live in my heart and my memory.
Yeah.
That was genius. A genius evening.
It was ballsy, and also for the Bush administration to have,
natured.
Yeah, to have him be there, because they knew what he was.
I'm not sure they did.
You don't think so? I'm giving the Bush administration too much credit. Am I always now giving the Bush administration too much credit because of the Trump administration?
Yeah, it's as though there's been a Republican strategy for years now, I would say almost since its inception, to look at the history of America as a purely noble and heroic thing by forever lowering the bar of the present.
And that's certainly what is occurring now.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Here's the thing.
There's a thing?
President Trump decided
early on. He decided early.
He decided a long time ago. Yeah. He's like, well, I'm not going to the court.
I'm very impressed with your ability to say President Trump without then taking a weird pause. I can't do it still.
I understand. It is hard. It's a hard thing to say. It's a hard every time
We're all as
a
country going to suffer from PTSD.
So
post-Trump sexual dysfunction.
Yeah. So
that one was for the drive home.
Now, here's the thing: did Trump ever have any other option than to not go to this thing? Because all he does is scream about how these people are fake. Why were these people, these journalists, why were they going to even want to have him there when all he does is scream about how they're all fake? Like, was that even, if it had come down to it, do you think the journalists
and to allow him the audio, and then there's always the president gives his response to the comedy, and so to give him the forum to then go ahead and ramble on and scream at all of them for 22 minutes.
Well, part of the fun in the past of those dinners has been that it's essentially a corporate retreat.
Yeah.
It's inside jokes, and now we're going to find out whether the boss actually has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
We're going to find out if he can play along with the game. And Trump can't. Bush tried. He tried really hard.
Yeah.
But it takes a level of intellect to be funny.
Yes.
The job of the comic is essentially to always be the smartest guy in the room. No matter how low status he or she plays, no matter how much the jokes are based on his or her own ability to see through a thing. To do it, you need to be able to write jokes, and that takes an intellectual capacity. So Bush didn't understand that funny little routine about how he was wandering around the Oval Office looking for weapons of mass destruction was not funny. It was literally stand-up tragedy, right? Yeah. We killed millions of people over a thing that we were wrong about. That's hilarious. That's not hilarious, sir. We all are a little bit complicit in war crimes now. Thank you. But he tried. He came from a political family. They knew that there was the need to perform. Yeah. Obama is a genius.
Yeah.
Obama is really smart and genuinely funny. So he would get writers to put together this thing, and he'd be up there, he'd get roasted by somebody, and then be able to very calmly and in his own established persona do what he does. Trump has no self-control and probably early stage dementia.
Well, if you saw that
That was at the
Al
Sharpton.
not Al Sharpton.
Franken.
Al, the dinner.
Alf.
The dinner that both after the debate that both him and Hillary
Yes.
Clinton did. It's like
The Al
Catholic
Bundy
Church and
dinner, we
it's
know.
Al something dinner. I'll think of it before
Capone.
the end.
Buman, albumin dinner.
Fredo.
The point is, I mean, this is a man who, by the way, his biggest credit before being the president was he was the host of a reality show, and he bombed as bad as anyone would ever.
Oh,
But at
yeah.
least he bombed viciously.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
So
he has no self-awareness.
And I think no self-awareness. Obama had a self-awareness. Also, Obama
Also had
had
Judd Apatow on the hotline
But
to
you know
write
what?
jokes.
But here's the thing. He had a sense of the culture also.
Yeah.
He understood what was going on in the culture, where Trump, living in Trump Tower and being in his own world of delusion, does not. So it's a good thing he's not at this dinner. Because part of me still wonders, like, oh, fuck, our president can't even take this. Like, it's just a reminder of he's like baby president.
Right? Yeah. No. It's the issues with him doing it would be so many. I mean, first of all, it would make very clear to everybody that he is the thin-skinned lunatic that we all know him to be.
That we all know and love.
Say, I loathe him. Please do not put love in my mouth where there is none. And if I had $1 for every
Father.
time I've said that, but there's that. There's the possibility that as a joke he would say something that sets off a nuclear confrontation, and he knows that he cannot stand up against a real comic. So he had to bow out of it. And as with everything he does, he did it as gracelessly and clumsily as is humanly possible.
Well, what he's doing is, on that night, he is holding a rally to celebrate his 100 days in office in Pennsylvania. Then he's already campaigning.
Is that Saturday? Is that this Saturday?
It's this Saturday. That is. I mean, this will have happened. This episode comes up Sunday, but I mean, that was his plan to instead, which I'm sure it's just going to be a lot of him bitching about the fake news, holding their dinner.
And I'm sure he'll have one or two pre-written jokes that he will claim went over very well.
Well, here's my question though: who does CNN cover? Do they cover the Trump rally, or do
No.
they cover the dinner?
No, they can't cover that rally.
I think they cover the dinner because the rally is old news. Fox News will get that beat, and then everyone's going to want to tune in to see. And it's also an interesting situation is that now you have Hassan Minhaj from The Daily Show, who is very funny, will be the comedian at the correspondence dinner, and gloves are off because he's not there. So I'm curious as to how vicious the comedy will be.
Oh, I didn't know it was Hassan. I
Yeah.
should send him a note and ask him if he needs jokes. Because, boy, I would like to see Hassan go after him. I would like to see a dark-skinned Middle Easterner
Muslim.
spend some time going after...
And not just that, there's a lot to go in about Fox News more than ever.
Yeah.
recently
Yeah.
with everything that's gone on with Bill
Absolutely.
Riley, and
Absolutely.
So-
There's a lot about Trump that worries me as a fashionista that have nothing to do with the politics. I don't know if you're aware of this. To this day, we all wear our waistcoats, our vests, with the bottom button undone so that Edward VII won't be self-conscious about his increasing weight. So do we now all have to wear ties that hang down to our scrota just so that the president doesn't think he's dressing himself like an idiot?
Or that he doesn't look fat because it's slimming.
Is that what he thinks?
That's what I heard is that the long ties, like I think your
Genius.
grandmother would tell you that like it makes you look slimming.
That's another thing. If you are, and I recently lost 30 pounds. I'm not trying to weight shame anybody.
Except for Edward VII.
But if you're, but he can take it. He's got a thin-skinned president. But if you are 50 to 100 pounds overweight, You don't solve it by wearing a suit that is 2 sizes too big. That just makes you look like a disgruntled associate professor at a community college.
And those suits are expensive too. I'm imagining he's not buying those off the rack.
They certainly don't look expensive, but that may just be because he keeps insisting that they put an extra 2 inches everywhere so that he'll look thinner.
Well, LBJ needed a little extra inches around where the
bunghole.
by his bunghole. Have you
Is
heard
that
this?
right?
Yeah.
There are
these great tapes.
of LBJ talking to his tailor and says, "Can you give me a couple inches down there around the bunghole? Because otherwise it gets a little tight down there."
And he's belching on the tape.
Wow.
It's amazing. Just go online, look up LBJ recording tailor. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
Yeah.
I apparently did not know what the word bunghole meant.
As spoken by a drunk Texan president.
It's interesting that maybe there'll be maybe everyone will get extra short ties now as well. My father. I was on the phone with my father and he was complaining about how he went to a restaurant. He wanted his steak well done, and they were giving him crap about my father.
It's like being out here and saying you want something gluten-free.
And my father was like, "I like a well done steak." And he goes, and I said, Trump, I read, because I just read an article about how Trump likes well done steaks. And now my father is horrified that the fact he is ordering well done steaks. He's like, I don't want people to think it's because I'm associated.
Oh, good for him.
Steak a la
I
Trump.
love that.
Yeah, my father. I mean, every day. The new reality is every week when I call my dad, the conversation starts with "Oh my God, what is happening with Trump?" Every conversation. I mean, the beginning of this interview is probably the longest I've gone without talking about Trump.
A lot of people are having this conversation all the time. It is a terrifying time. We are potentially in the moment of the rise of fascism.
Yeah.
And I don't know if happens as much for everybody as it is for Jews. But I know that I and every Jew I talk to is going through this thing where they're thinking, all my life I've thought if I had been there, I would have seen it happening. I would have done something. I wouldn't have allowed it to get where it got. And every day we're confronted with another slide toward it, thinking, but I'm not actually doing anything, am I? I'm just watching it happen and waiting to see this is how it happens. And it's terrifying at a visceral level. I have a new play that is in the hands of a director named Adrian Cohen right now. I'm hoping he's going to direct a premiere of it in L.A. this fall, where the first act is Germany in the 30s, and the second act is Laguna now. And in the same way, and the truth is, it's not just with Trump. I started writing it before the election. In the same way that the German civilians, the German populace, were able to turn a blind eye to what was happening. Just get on the train. Come on, they're relocating you. It's not a big deal. They found new apartments for you to the east. Get on the train. White middle-class America is utterly oblivious to the school-to-prison pipeline that the black population faces.
Yeah.
And it's essentially slave camps. It's corporatized, so it is an ownership of the facility in which these people are kept and forced to do work at lower than minimum wage, and voting rights are screwed up by it, and the percentage of incarceration among blacks is way higher than the percentage among whites, but it's not as though there's more crime among blacks. Yeah. It's just a different set of crimes that are, or the same set of crimes being penalized very differently, and we all look the other way because it's easier to pretend that we are a just and noble society, and when in fact the only thing we are number one at is the import of giant foam number one fingers.
Those are important items to have.
Well, how else are you going to show your support for your team?
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
The light flickered for a moment there,
Yes.
right? Okay, good.
No, you're not. Yeah,
we all simultaneously had a stroke.
Okay, I just wanted to know.
When they say when podcasters spend enough time together, their strokes start to sync up.
If that's the thing. The power's been going out a lot lately because it's been very windy, and I'm.
That or your landlord's a miser.
Maybe. Let's move on.
All right.
To something more fantastic.
I rambled. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. That's
and yet he persisted.
We had to move on eventually because we have to get to the real issues, which is the unicorn frappuccino. Dylan, you seem like a man who takes on all the new food trends. Like, you're probably getting those, like, Taco Bell's got a new product. You're probably there. Burger King's putting out chicken fries.
You're deep in the avocado toast.
You seem like the perfect man to talk to about the unicorn frappuccino. To be fair, though, this was something that was brought to my attention by you, Sean.
Yes, so Starbucks released this sweet, sour, sugary monstrosity onto our world for a mere 5 days. It just appeared out of the blue like a unicorn would. It made its presence known quite quickly on social media that this was now available for purchase. And what it is...
What it is a drink that was created just for social media, basically.
Exactly. It's blue and red, and it has blue and red sugar on it, and it tastes like mangoes and sweetness and tartness and the 90s. I mean, it looks like a Trapper Keeper.
It has the calorie of 3 Snickers bars, which I would rather eat 3 Snickers bars because they're fucking
not going anywhere for a while.
You know, at least the McRib has the decency to be something people wanted. I feel like this was thrust upon us, and it was. There were people online drinking these things. Now,
but it was amazing that the entire grief cycle happened over the span of these 5 days, where people were like angry, why did this happen? And then they were in denial, I don't want to deal with this. And then, slowly they got their way to acceptance of like, okay, I guess I need to try this.
And then they took selfies with their drink. What do you feel about the idea of a food or drink product that's created literally just for the idea of we can take selfies with us? Is this brilliant marketing, or is it just? I mean, I guess it is brilliant marketing, but
did you try the unicorn?
I did not. I did not try the unicorn frappuccino. Although, while you were describing it, I wrote a description of it in my head that I chose not to offer up because it would have created the illusion that I had tried a unicorn frappuccino. I described it in my head as a sweet tart smoothie.
That sounds about right.
I don't feel that we need to make beverages out of candy. I would say that this is actually a prime example of one of the key points that I make in my show.
Oh.
Look at that.
Dylan Brody's Driving Hollywood, about to be on tour in Chicago, Barcelona, London, and New York, and available for streaming at nextupcomedy.com. And that is this. I used to believe that the problem with capitalism is that unregulated, it devolves into feudalism. And that we have so poisoned the word socialism that the nation is afraid to let it evolve toward socialism, which is where I feel capitalism should lead. That is not the problem, though, with capitalism. The problem with capitalism is that for it to function as anything other than essentially a prolonged mandatory participation Ponzi scheme, it depends on an untenable pre-industrial notion of unlimited natural resources. And we as a society know that's not real at this point. As a species, we tend to cling to comfort, and that means it's easier to stay as we are than to evolve into something brand new and really think in new ways. The unicorn frappuccino is the distillation of capitalism. It is the deliberate manufacture of something whose only value is its ability to be sold. It has no nutritional value. It has no intellectual value. It has no artistic value. From what I hear of the taste of the thing, it doesn't even actually have a culinary value. All it has is the ability to manipulate the current marketing trends to create its own sales trend. And it was at least self-aware enough to know that that was a limited lifetime and should come and go as quickly as possible. That said, do I get one of those for appearing on the show?
Well, they no longer make them.
Fortunately, we should have purchased one 6 days ago and kept it in the freezer, where it would settle into its own mediocrity.
Which, by the way, is the title of my next album.
But Sean was talking to some baristas.
Yes.
And apparently the next thing...
Everyone hated making them, by the way. I heard that the baristas hated making them. They were sticky and repugnant and...
Yeah, that was a big blowback, but apparently things are about to get worse for the baristas.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Because you were telling me that they're coming up with the s'more frappuccino.
Now, I don't know if this is a reissue.
Snickerdoodle beverage?
Yes, and I'm not quite sure if this was a reissue, because I vaguely remember this existing, so I don't know if this is a reissue of something they had in the past, or some brand new monstrosity designed to feed the, as you put it, the beast of capitalism. But he said the s'more, he said, to quote, "You think this is bad? The s'mores frappuccino, that's a real bitch to make."
Wow.
So everyone, go into your closest Starbucks and order the Venti S'mores Frappuccino.
Next time we see you, we will get you a Venti S'mores Frappuccino for this appearance.
Well,
when you come back
they actually
from the tour, I'll be waiting.
They have to cook the marshmallows over an open flame before they can put them in.
What are we doing to these poor... This could have been the enemy, because what are we doing to these poor baristas? You know, I've worked... I never worked food service, but I've worked like retail and stuff like that, and that's hard enough. I was talking to a girl who works at Starbucks, and it sounds like the biggest... Working a morning shift at Starbucks sounds like the biggest nightmare of anyone's life. She said these people come in, she said they're angry because they haven't had their coffee.
It's 5 a.m.
They're barking ridiculous concoctions at her.
My wife and I have a thing that we do when we travel that we call travel face, where when you go into an airport, you know that most of the people in the space around you are stressed out.
Right.
They're either going to or coming from visiting family or on a business thing that has, and so nobody is really happy, and they're either running late or they have a lot of time to kill, so they're not happy about the use of their time, and it is essentially the shopping mall of the damned. So my wife and I just remain friendly and cheerful, and we try to make everybody we encounter chuckle at least, if not laugh at least once, just try to lighten the mood every way we possibly can. Yesterday, I had to go into Starbucks because my coffee machine broke yesterday. Because apparently it knew I was going on the road, and it figured it needed some time off. So this was the time to do it, because I lead a charmed life. But it broke a couple of days early, so I went to Starbucks, and I walked in the door and immediately felt the vibe, and I went, oh, travel face, got it.
Yeah.
And I got online, and I was just being funny and light with everybody, and the barista I dealt with just seemed so delighted to have a conversation with me. Here's a thing that I learned, and I will share this with everybody. If you're open and happy and kind to everybody around you, the world is a much friendlier place toward you.
Yeah. That travel face, I do that in particular around the holidays, shopping, because, like I said, I worked retail. I used to work in a video store in the mall, and I remember one guy in line on our video store during the holidays just flipping out and just knocking an entire display of Sopranos DVDs over and storming out because he had lost his mind.
He hated that Columbus Day episode.
The thing is, it is, you know, you eat a lot of shit working retail the holidays, and I know that. So whenever I'm in any of these stores, I'm going to just be nice to these people. It's not that hard.
Not just to the people behind the counter, to the other people in line.
Yeah.
To the guy that's freaking out.
My heart's not that big.
Just all of them. Well, yours is damaged. We know that.
It's true.
It's physically altered in some way.
Yes, more so than you know.
The only...
I know. I remember this.
Oh, yes.
Oh, there you go. The only people that I am actively shitty to are those bastards at Spectrum, the cable people. Those are the only people that I actively fall apart on, and then I always end up breaking down and apologizing, and then they say we understand. Because they do understand, and I know it's not their fault. I
start every bureaucracy conversation. There's corporate bureaucracy and there's governmental bureaucracy, but it's anyone working in a bureaucracy. I start every conversation by saying, please forgive me if I get upset. This has been a very frustrating process already.
Yeah.
And then they know that we're there already.
Yeah.
And then I try to remain funny and charming with them as well.
Yeah.
And I get so much better stuff done. Before it was Spectrum, when it was still Time Warner Cable. When I first got Time Warner Cable, so we're talking late 80s, early 90s. I got a cable box, right? And at that time, you rented the cable box. I don't know if we still do that or not. We rented the cable box from them. And then I got charged for it twice on my bill. And that didn't seem right. So I called them, and I had this conversation with them in which I said, so you charged me twice for the cable box. And after a lot of them going through, clicking on the other end of the line, they said, oh, I see what happened here. Let us just take one of those off for you. And they took one of them off for me. And I had that conversation every month for the first 7 months that I was with Time Warner Cable. And every time it got handled within 10 minutes of me getting someone on the line. And by the last time it happened, my wife was going, how do you keep doing that? How do you not yell at them? And I was like, it's never the same person. It's not somebody's fault. It's some idiotic system glitch that causes this to happen. And the last time it happened, I said, so you'll know this is the 6th month in a row this has happened. And I've mentioned this every time. But if there's some way you could get it to not only reverse the charges for this month, but not cause it to happen again next month, I would appreciate that no end. And the guy said, I don't know if that's possible.
At least he was honest with you.
Yeah, it's the nature of their job.
Well, the last time I had the call with Spectrum, because they keep...
Well, this is your annual... it's like a cleansing of anger ritual.
The woman on the phone said, look... Time Warner used to
I could see it coming, man. Breathe.
She's like, Time Warner used to negotiate with people. She's like, Spectrum doesn't negotiate.
No, we do not negotiate with terrorists.
I said, you treat your customers like the government treats terrorists. And she said, yeah. She admitted, and she had a very honest, and then she, I don't know how much, but she was... Well, I understand. She's like, believe me, we don't like a lot of these changes either because it gets us calling them, complaining to them about the thing that they already know is bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm getting all worked up, which is good.
These are people who essentially have Sean Spicer's job.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have to take the utter
do work
nonsense,
in Holocaust centers.
The utter nonsense that is coming from my boss, and I have to translate that into something that I can only hope will pass the bullshit detector of the people whose life it is to detect this bullshit.
But the added valence of Sean Spicer is that he knows his boss is watching.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm all worked up now, so I might as well get to this portion of the podcast.
Let's do it. Have I offended you in some way?
No.
Oh, that's always my going assumption.
Will was pre-offended.
I'm always pre-offended. By my life. Now, look. We have spoken for a long time on the show about the trials and tribulations of dating here in Los Angeles. It's a fucking nightmare. And we have also spoken about how, I'm back in the online dating thing. I'm back on Match.com, which is going horribly. You message like 100 women and maybe like 1.5 get back to you. It's a nightmare.
I'm interested in the half.
Yes, I thought you might be. And if by some miracle... one of these girls does respond. Let's say she gets back to you. Now you have to get to the point where you figure out where are you going to meet this person? Where are we going to have a conversation, the getting to know you face-to-face conversation, which is always going to be awkward. So what do? You kind of try to find out where she lives in a not creepy way and then start poring over Yelp pages to figure out what is the best bar and or coffee shop where we can meet and have this discussion. Well, last weekend, I met a girl who lived in Los Feliz. So I found the perfect little coffee shop on Los Feliz Boulevard for our meeting. And I was looking forward to it because it was the first time it seemed like I was getting good back and forth banter with someone on one of these sites in a while. But here's the problem. I show up on Los Feliz Boulevard.
You turned into Louis Black for a second.
Los Feliz Boulevard is completely shut down due to construction. The road stunk of tar and rock, and it was loud, and you could not cross the street. Now, this was not a problem for me because I came from the north, and the coffee shop was on the north side of the street. But this young lady came from the south and was stuck on the other side of the street. She was running late, had to park God knows, a mile away. And then I saw her stranded on the other side of the street, having to walk all the way down to where there wasn't construction. I would have, as a gentleman, gotten in my car and drove and picked her up, except I could not cross the street and help this woman. Dating in LA is hard enough, but it's even harder when a poor girl has to walk in 90-degree heat across a tar-slicked road. And that's why you, the Los Angeles Department of Street Services, are this week's enemy of the podcast. Go fuck yourself. You're cock-blocking me. Stop cock-blocking me. Can't you do the shit in the middle of the night when decent people are asleep and not trying to go out on dates?
Oh, yeah, nobody would be upset if they did all the road work in the middle of the night.
I don't live in Los Feliz.
Fucking not your problem.
Not my problem.
You've brought up a series of things here that I think need just a moment of reframing.
Okay.
And then you will be so much happier.
If that's possible.
First of all, in all of these dating things,
Yeah.
the solution is this. I am going to buy you coffee or food on our first date.
Yes.
I feel it is important to me to do that, just to feel as though I am dating properly.
Yes.
So it is up to you to decide where we're going to go.
I'll put it on her to decide.
Make it convenient for you. I can go anywhere you want. I have a, what do you call it, a car?
Yeah.
I will come to you, or we can meet at your favorite place that you never go to because it's too far away. I don't care. Yeah. I am buying you a meal. You choose the place. And that way you have taken the pressure off of yourself and you've given them the freedom to make the decision. I want you to feel safe. I want you to feel comfortable. I don't want this to be me imposing my will on you in our first date. But I need you to know that I'm buying.
Okay. I buy.
I think that'll save you a lot of trouble. It may wind up that some of the people will say, oh no, I can't do that. Then I feel obligated to you. I have to, well, whatever makes you feel the most comfortable. But you have to tell me where we're meeting. That's first of all. Secondly, at that moment when you are separated by a broken road and trying to get together,
I feel like this is a metaphor.
You have got to scream across the road. This is the beginning of every romantic comedy ever written.
Yes.
She's the one. I'm supposed to meet her for coffee, but there's this construction project.
But is it the beginning or is that the third act?
Possibly.
When they're trying to meet each other and they get there and they both come in the road and then, there's a canyon of shit between them.
I remember shouting to someone from one side of the tube to the other in England when I was 21.
Mind the gap.
For God's sake, listen to me. This could be the most romantic moment of our lives. And then a train came between us. And then the train went away and the woman was gone. And the people on my side of the tube just burst into spontaneous applause. So even though the moment did not happen between me and this woman that I thought I might be having a moment with, I got applause. And that's what really matters.
That's true.
You missed your moment, Will.
I did miss my moment. I could have had everyone outside the coffee shop cheering me on.
It turned out, this is a weird thing actually about that story. The woman that I saw was a woman that I knew from college in the States, who I did not know was in England.
Oh, so this was just someone you saw?
I saw her across the thing, and it was a woman that, we had classes together, we knew each other, she was cute, she was funny, we'd done stand-up together some. And I saw her there, and I tried to shout to her, and she wasn't hearing me. And then I said, this could be the most romantic moment of our lives. And then the train came, and she was gone. And I got this applause. And then when I got back to the States, I saw her, and I said, I was shouting to you at the London Tube. And she said, I've never been to London. And I said, what are you talking about? 3 weeks ago, you were across the tube from me. And she said, my twin sister was in London.
Amazing.
So
That's amazing.
I was shouting at a stranger who just was either not noticing me because I was using the wrong name or utterly baffled.
Sean, have you had the city of Los Angeles, particularly the Department of Street Services, get in the way of you dating?
I don't know. Somehow that has been the last factor that has impeded my dating life. Somehow I've not yet run into this obstacle. I'm trying to think if I've ever had anything throw a date quite in that way. I don't think so.
I mean, look,
I've had all manner of minor annoyances, but nothing quite as visually dramatic as a torn up street.
I think at the end of the day, the date ended up not working because of a chemistry thing and not necessarily, but it didn't get off to a good start.
But I mean, to be fair, you did sit down and say, a la Veep, you can order either appetizer or dessert. Take your pick.
Yeah, you can't have both. We always
Left side of the menu only, please.
Yes,
Left side of the
exactly.
menu only.
we always like to end the show on a weird note, unless sometimes we end it on a sad note.
Okay.
And we're going to end
You're
it
the
on a
first
sad
guest to
note
ever do that.
because
I can't be.
You are.
You are. Jonathan Demme died.
Yes, he did.
Terrific filmmaker. I mean, first of all, you look at his resume. It's so versatile. So many music documentaries, comedies, Married to the Mob, Something Wild. And then after doing those films to come out with something like The Silence of the Lambs just showed of what a great understanding he had for film in all its genres. I mean, obviously, I think the movie he will be remembered for the most is The Silence of the Lambs.
And Philadelphia.
And it's Philadelphia as well. I mean, Silence of the Lambs was my first introduction to him, which I probably saw at way too young an age and loved, and is still one of my favorite films of all time. Sean, did you have some Jonathan Demme thoughts?
No, I just he was someone that I knew nothing about until I saw Silence of the Lambs, and it just to this day one of my favorite movies. And then I went back and watched many of his films. Even saw his early films with Roger Corman that he made. In Caged Heat was one of them. He made about 3 films with Roger Corman. Then he did the Talking Heads music documentary, Stop Making Sense, Swimming to Cambodia with Sterling Gray.
Spalding
Gray. Why am I thinking-
Gray.
Never quite get that name right. Spalding Gray. And then he got into a very interesting period in the 2000s. He did the adaptation of Beloved, Toni Morrison's Beloved, which is one of my favorite books. The Manchurian Candidate remake.
He did a Manchurian Candidate and The Truth About Charlie, which was a remake of Charade.
Yes, and then his late masterpiece, Rachel Getting Married, which if you haven't seen recently is phenomenal and one of the best Anne Hathaway performances. And just a depiction of all the joy that really bubbles below the surface of a family wedding. So,
were you a fan of his work, his filmography?
I was not specifically aware of his filmography until he died, and then I went, oh, and he was Stop Making Sense. Oh, and there's a lot of that going on.
You don't realize how many he did, yeah.
And yes, to some degree, a fan of his stuff. I will say my only takeaway from this is based on what you just said about having seen Silence of the Lambs when you were too young, is that I am old.
yeah.
Oh. And on that note,
A weird and sad note.
Dylan, thank you
for
much.
playing.
Thank you so much for coming back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me back on the show. In a few months, when I'm back from the tour, I'll be promoting the release of the Modern Depression Guidebook, the re-release of the Modern Depression Guidebook, and I would love to come back again and talk about that.
You are always welcomed here, sir.
You say that, and yet all the times I've shown up late at night, you just lie there and sleep while I watch.
So tell the people one last time where they could find everything they need to know about you.
Go to dylanbrody.com and click on the Emporium of Fine Words and Phrases, and you will find all my books and CDs and books that I'm anthologized in. I have a story coming out in the new issue of American Bystander.
Oh.
So go to americanbystander.org, I believe, to find out where you get copies of that. I'm unbelievably honored to be in that publication. You can find me at DylanBrodysDrivingHollywood.com if you want to know where the tour is taking me. You can find me on Twitter at Dylan Brody. You can find me on Facebook at The Dylan Brody. That's my fan page, and it is more important to my career that you like me there than that you become a friend of mine whom I've never met on my other page for reasons that I cannot explain, although I will tell you that when I go into meetings, my work is judged on the number of followers and fans that I have, not on the quality of the work. And if you want to be involved in the boring old uncle of the internet, you can find me on LinkedIn by searching for my name.
Okay.
Oh.
And also on Twitter, did you mention?
I'm on Twitter. I'm on YouTube, by the as well. Dylan Brody, my channel is just overflowing with me.
If you search Dylan Brody, you'll find Dylan Brody.
It's true. There's, as far as I know, only one other Dylan Brody in the nation. 14, I guess probably 16-year-old now, and I almost had to sue him. I had a very calm, friendly conversation with his parents instead of suing him. And he stopped doing what he was doing. But yeah, he he somehow had gotten a Twitter account that was like Dylan Brody _ or something, because that's his name. I can't object to that. But then he had made the name that comes up on the screen just Dylan Brody, looking exactly like mine.
Right.
And all of his stuff was this sort of adolescent, fuck you, biatches stuff. And I'm like, I can't.
And you've moved past that phase.
This
of
is
comedy.
this is my brand. I can't really have
We'll see
this.
when that stuff will kill in London.
Can't really have this out in the world under my name, kid. And then when I said this to him first, I said, could you please not? Then I got bombarded with emails and spam and Twitter stuff from this group of teenagers who leapt to his defense. Fuck you, dude. You don't get to tell him what he can do. And then I had to call his parents. Okay, so your kid, I get that we have the same name, and I'm sorry, but he can't use my name to say fuck you, biatches, every 20 minutes on Twitter because it's damaging my brand.
We got a hard 10-minute limit.
And they said, I get it. Okay, yeah, we'll take care of this.
At least he had reasonable parents.
Yeah, his parents were utterly, but he was not.
Well, would you rather have had 16-year-old fuck you, biatch Dylan Brody, or angry America coal miner from West Virginia Dylan Brody? Who's really into his guns, Jesus, and making his opinions known on the internet?
Would have sued him.
Would you?
Wouldn't have called the parents.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I would have gone litigious on him. And
Kid gets some leeway because he's a kid.
he's just a kid. Yeah, he's not a supporter of fascism. He's just an idiot.
Yeah.
And he's not an idiot by way of intellect. He's an idiot by way of growth, development. But no, if he was a grown-up being under my name, then I would say, please stop. And if he didn't stop, then I go straight to the lawyers.
Sean.
You can find me on Twitter at @DylanBrody_.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Your dad was a nice guy.
A very nice man. No, you can find me at all fine forms of social media at the Sean David. I have an especially appealing Instagram account, so you may want to check that
I
out.
heard that about you.
Well, it's the people love.
All girls' feet all the time.
You can follow me on Twitter at the real Will Link.
How do you spell?
That's how you say that at symbol. That's how the proper way to
I
pronounce
didn't know.
There you go. That's why it curves around. That's the whole.
Good to know.
I just did a bunch of shows, and now I have no shows lined up, so I have nothing to plug in that regard. But I got to book more shows. I ran into David Huntsberger, and he said, I got to put you on my show. So hopefully I'll be plugging that soon. I'll be on his show soon.
Well, if you want the hottest of the Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. takes, you want to be following Will on Twitter.
Oh, yeah. No, I still tweet about all that stuff. Oh, I am getting the...
Possibly the best show on network television right now.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's great. And the second half of the season has been remarkable.
Oh, you might be saying, what were you saying? You may be
I'm going to be doing the Orphan Black podcast
Excellent.
again. With Megan. We're coming back to do that. We're in discussions. We need a name for it because now we're going to be on our own. We're no longer affiliated with a podcast network. We're just going to be us loose in the open.
So it would be an Orphan Black fan podcast.
Yeah.
It should be the Orphan Black Orphaned podcast.
Oh, you know what?
Orphaned
That's not bad, 'cause
podcast.
we are Orphan. We used to be on AfterBuzz, then we were on Giantess.
I understood the double meaning I was going for, but thank you for narrating it to me.
Yeah, so I'm narrating for them.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
For the coal miners.
I thought you were assuming I was stupid.
Orphaned cast. Yeah.
This is...
Do I need to delete this so we don't have copyright issues?
Nah, no, who's gonna? They want to start an Orphan Black podcast with me, my guess. No one's gonna listen to them. They're gonna keep listening to me. On the show next week, terrific voiceover actor John Thomas will be here. We're gonna be talking about his career. We've been watching some of the videos. There's a pretty hilarious Requiem for a Bird video that won an Emmy that we want to discuss with him. So he will be on next week. And the week after that, the host of one of the shows I recently did, Tales from Tinseltown, Oscar Sagastumi. Am I butchering it?
No,
you got
said
that
his name
correct.
correctly for a while
Oscar
now.
Sagastumi.
So is he fucking with me all the time?
Yes.
Oh. Okay. Thank you, Dylan.
He's an exhausted man with 4 children. He's got no time
4
for
kids and a dog.
Yeah, no time for your nonsense. Dylan, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for giving me the pleasure.
Okay, and on that note...
We keep saying that. So for the Will Sean podcast,
For the Will Sean Podcast, I'm Sean David.
I'm Will Link.
We're finished.
We're finished.
I have more to say.